Welcome to our web class discussing the first 100 days of uncertainty. There are many changes happening nationally, and in this video, we'll talk about these changes, how your retirement can be affected, and focus on the things you can control during these uncertain periods of time. Welcome everyone. I'm your host, Christina Gross of Filbrandt & Company. With me today are Jim Twesme, an equity specialist, and Steve Hoffman, our company's portfolio manager. On a daily basis, we hear from our clients that they are uncertain about the new administration and what effects its changes and new policies will have on their lives. Right now, uneasiness is what we hear from professors who we speak with. But Jim, should they be concerned?
Well, of course, it's reasonable to be concerned. We're definitely living in interesting times and uncertain times. For example, our nation is politically divided. Many people are struggling economically. We have the ongoing threat of terrorist attacks. Outside the U.S., there are political divisions as well. The U.K. is leaving the European Union, and the question is, will other countries follow? There is uneven economic progress outside the U.S., and there is uncertainty about the U.S. relationships with our traditional allies and adversaries. On the other hand, there have always been periods of uncertainty. If we look back over the last 5 decades, there have been serious economic, military, and political crises that we've had to deal with.
Jim, no matter how much we worry, there are some things we just aren't able to control.
Well, absolutely. Let's accept the fact that there are many things, financial and otherwise, that we can't control, such as the stock market and debt markets, the weather, and I don't think there's anyone on the planet that can control Donald Trump. So as we look at our world today, we have to ask ourselves, is our glass half empty or half full? Despite all the uncertainties, both at home and abroad, there are many positives. The U.S. is in its 8th year of recovery since the Great Recession. The stock market has more than tripled over that time period. Unemployment is low. We've had a record 76 months of consecutive job growth in the U.S. And outside the U.S., there are many economies that are improving.
So, Jim, it's probably better to focus on things we can control then.
Absolutely. Regardless of whether you see your glass as half full or half empty, from a financial standpoint especially, there are things you can control. You can control the risk level in your portfolio, and this is especially important as you get closer to retirement. And Steve is going to talk about this in just a minute. You can control how much you save. Most university programs allow you to save up to $48,000 per year on a tax-deferred basis. You can also work to minimize your income taxes. It's also important to work with someone so that you can put together a well-planned, tax-efficient estate plan. Many people are not aware that most of their assets, that is their retirement savings, their life insurance, and their real estate, are not controlled by a will. And then it's important also to have proper insurance coverage, both life insurance, long-term care insurance, and liability insurance. And finally, you can control whether you seek advice in areas where you don't have the time or expertise to manage yourself. We recommend working with a fiduciary, because a fiduciary is legally obligated to work in the best interests of his or her clients. It's important to know that not all financial advisors are fiduciaries. And we're here at Filbrandt & Company, we're going to be doing another webcast in the next 2 weeks to address this subject.
So Steve, you have some thoughts about focusing on things we can control about our investment and retirement savings.
Yeah, and I'd like to cover 2 points today. One, I want to make a big picture comment or review on how the markets typically behave, and a little bit on philosophy. And then secondly, I want to dig into what are we currently doing in our investment portfolios to manage risk. The biggest tool for risk management is asset allocation. And when we look at a client's situation, we determine their asset allocation by looking at their financial goals, their time horizon, risk tolerances, income needs, things such as that. And so the point I want to make is your asset allocation is part of your long-term plan. And so we don't want to screw up the long-term plan with the decisions based off short-term emotions or market movements. When we look at asset allocations here at Filbrandt, we often use the boat analogy. And as the boat in the upper left corner, as you might guess, it can cut through some pretty big waves, but it goes fast enough to get you where you're going. And people that are in their retirement stage of life typically want a boat or asset allocation that does that. We definitely can build faster boats, like in the upper right, built for speed, but it maybe is not the best portfolio for rough waters. And then finally, now and then we see some portfolios that maybe have a few leaks or holes in them. Maybe they're not allocated appropriately or have concentrations, and half jokingly, maybe that bowl looks like that one in the bottom picture.
So, Steve, volatility in the financial markets is of concern to some. But what some people don't realize is that markets are volatile by their very nature.
Yeah, if we look back historically, we can see that the markets have 5% dips multiple times every year, 10% drops. You can expect every year. Actually, the average intra-year drop is over 14%. We have not had a drop like that going back to 2009. So we've had a period of stability here that maybe is unreasonable to expect going forward. And then, of course, we have the big drops, 20% drops every 3.5 years. So the odds say we're due for something like that, but just because we haven't had one in a while doesn't mean it's going to happen now.
Steve, one of the metrics you and market analysts like you use to evaluate market volatility is the profits to earning ratio of stocks in the Standard & Poor's 500 index.
Yeah, this is the most common valuation metric we use. And I have a very long-term chart in front of you, and it basically shows that valuations cap out at about 20 historically. We've had a few exceptions. We had the dot-com bubble around 2000. I think we got temporarily insane there. Bid stock prices way too high. And then during the Great Recession, we had earnings, or the denominator in that PE ratio. The earnings went down so low that artificially shot that number up. But excluding those two exceptions, we typically cap out about 20, and that's where we're at now, so we don't expect a lot of further upside in terms of valuation.
Talk a bit about the 20-year rest periods the market takes that most people probably aren't aware of.
Yeah, it's interesting where we have these long periods of time where the market moves either sideways or down, and during these phases, most healthy companies are generally generating profits that accumulate over those years. So you're getting some built-up valuation in those companies. And currently, if we go back to 2000, we've had 17 years and not a lot of upward movement in the market. So after these long periods, you can see that sometimes you get some strong run-ups to the upside. I'm not saying that's going to happen now, but we definitely have to consider that we've been moving sideways for a long time.
You referred earlier to profits to earnings ratio. How do stock market prices generally correlate to companies' earnings?
Well, there's a strong correlation, as indicated by the slide in front of our viewers. The orange line is that of earnings of the S&P 500, and then the blue line is that of the stock price of the S&P 500. So you can see there's a very tight correlation, and this is why we focus on earnings so much, because in the long run, that's one of the few certainties we know, is that stock prices will follow earnings.
So can you recap some of the key points our viewers should remember about portfolio construction?
Yeah, and this is where I want to get into the specifics about what we're doing right now in our portfolios. Right now we have a heavy value towards value stocks. Those stocks typically pay higher dividends. They tend to perform better in bear markets. And the third bonus is right now they're performing better than their growth counterparts. The other side is when we hire an active manager or a mutual fund, typically the common thread among them is that when markets go down, that's when they add their most value. So that's another layer of protection we add in. And our process itself looks at valuations and relative strength. And so that tends to keep us in the stronger areas of the market. So again, downside cushion or protection. And then I think it's we have to talk about fixed income with interest rates rising. There's a lot of concern about declining bond prices, and we've built our portfolios to do just fine in that environment. So I think we've really secured our portfolios, our position for this environment. Of course, we're going to get curves now and then, but I think our process will guide us through any waves that we may have. And most importantly, I think, is having our client meetings with advisors to control those things outside of the portfolios, which Jim alluded to earlier.
Jim, the focal point of this video is for professors to focus on things they can control.
Absolutely. Control what you can control. You can control the riskiness of your investment portfolio. You can control how much you save. You can look to minimize your income taxes. You can develop a well-planned estate plan. Make sure you have adequate insurance coverage. And finally, if you need help in any of these areas, contact a fiduciary like Filbrandt and Company to help you.
Jim and Steve, thank you for your insights. Filbrandt and Company serves the comprehensive financial planning needs of university professors. If you'd like a new set of eyes with specific expertise in the plans available to professors, we invite you to contact us. Until next time, thank you for watching this Filbrandt and Company video.